Hi there, it's Richard Little from Your Land Partner with you once again. I hope you're having a good day. We are on video, keep having to look down, 63 of 100. That's 100 videos in 100 days. Sort of taken us through lockdown, etc. in the UK and hopefully out the other side, but I'm not sure as 100 days will probably get us there. But anyway, we'll see. So we're towards the end of a sort of mini series on planning, where I think we're now probably video 13 or so. Now, anybody that's caught the previous video on planning strategy, that effectively we had some technical issues that ended up being a bit of an introduction. We was going to split the strategy videos into two. Might end up as three now. We'll wait and see how we go with this one. So let's crack on with it. So just a very quick recap. Strategy in this particular case is plan of action. Sort of, the route map, how we're going to get from where we want to be to where we want to where we want to be to where we will be, and how that the best route forward. So we looked at in the introduction, we looked at the key things being the objectives. Obviously, what is it we want to achieve? The obstacles that you would normally get in planning. Those of you that have any experience of planning, I'm guessing you'll have some good stories, some frustrating stories, etc. So there are obstacles. I would say, again, as a bit of a repeat really, is we often put those obstacles in our own way, or our own team put them in our way. It's pretty amazing, but you only realise that once you're doing what we call an autopsy on a planning situation, and the third O, if you like, is options. What options are there when we're strategizing for our planning? So this is very much based on what we're trying to achieve, what those objectives are, what type of scheme it is, how big it is, all this sort of stuff. So if we sort of crack on with strategy and how we look at it. So we strategize every opportunity in the appraisal stage. We might not go into the nth degree, but we'll have a good idea of what the planning route map looks like, what it looks like in terms of cost, and what it looks like in terms of time, because we will feed all of that into any deal structures. Or also within any investment, any funding, etc. We have to be realistic on time frames. So we see, as an example, we see quite a lot of people, and not all those that are just new to the table, but mostly those that are new to the table, signing up things we call options, so purchase options on land, giving us the right to buy, but not the obligation to buy a piece of land, over a period of time or during a period of time. And what we often see is, and also you could add to that, subject to planning deals, so conditional purchases, where they just don't give themselves enough time to explore the options that you can get if you strategize the planning correctly. So anyway, so what are we talking about? So if we have a little look at the different types of development that you might be doing. So if we start off with, let's say you want to extend a property. Now, the reason that we might want to extend a property is to, make it bigger. Obviously, if it's a residential property, as your own home or perhaps a rented property, you want to make it bigger because it's going to command a greater rent, or if it's your own home, gives you more space, etc. So quite a lot of permitted development rights in and around residential properties. That you can do a lot more with it than people believe. Again, you need to make sure that somebody really understands permitted development to be able to maximise anything, whether it's a single property or not. But if we look at extending a property, extending a single property to retain a single use, generally, it's pretty straightforward. It's as straightforward as they come. But if you're looking to do something that's perhaps a lot bigger, and it's perhaps it doesn't fit in under permitted development, it may impact perhaps on the neighbours. You've got to make sure that you know what you're putting forward is deliverable, you know, and if it's deliverable through just the straightforward the initial application, or whether or not if you get objections, which many people get objections, and quite strong objections to extending a single property from their neighbours and all sorts of things. You know, some of you may have experience of that. How do you take it through? So, you know, are you going to initially, are you going to have a pre-app? Are you then, you know, take the pre-app through to an application? And if you get it refused, are you going to take it to appeal, etc.? How far are you prepared to go? You know, so be realistic about that objective. You know, is it deliverable? So again, you're strategizing the planning that fits with your proposals, your objectives, because you know a lot of people that we well know. I'm sure you know people watching this will know of people that you know, yeah, they just want too much. It's not deliverable, you know, and you know, pushing the boundary is one thing, and we consistently look to do that. But some things are just ridiculous. You've only got to look at planning applications that have been turned down for some of the ridiculous applications that have been put in the first place. So you know, either the clients themselves, you know, the landowners are just, you know, got cloud cuckoo land, or they sometimes, and I have to say it's not a very nice thing to say, but they are sometimes encouraged by the consultants that are in and around them, you know, the fee gathering consultants, you know. Anyway, so you need to still strategize it. Another way that you might want to extend a building is because you may well want to extend it under permitted development, for instance, and then perhaps I don't know what you might want to do. You might want to convert it into a number of units. You extend it first under permitted development, or even under full planning, and then you actually apply to convert that. So you create more floor area, more value in effect, and then you actually then apply to separate it, to convert it into a number of units. So, you know, this is something what we call step planning, and step planning is often, permitted development is often used in step planning plays. So get what you can, create what you can on paper now, establish a value, and then moving forward, it's then a case of, right, okay, establish that value, right, now let's go for planning 4. So typically on a permitted development, a conversion from perhaps offices or a factory into residential, you'll get what you can on it, and then you'll go for full planning, probably for new windows, new doors, you know, new entrances, and more commonly now, and that may well change with increased permitted development rights in the near future, is more floors on the roof, so more floors to the building. So that's a stepped approach where you get some planning, then you move on to the next one. So that's if you're extending a property, etc. So if you're building a property in a garden, you know, how are you going to strategize that? So same things apply here. Are you giving yourself enough time? Are you going to go through the pre-app process? Are you then going to go through the full application process? Are you going to submit an outline application rather than a full application? Because by now, you know, I'm going to make an assumption that people do understand what that is, because they'd have watched previous videos or got input from other platforms, other books, etc. You know, using the outline process, outline application, and then applying for reserve matters once you've got agreement of basically in principle. We have also something called permission in principle. Is it usable in that area? Does it apply? Is your project too small, too big? Too big for that? So understanding what the options are, whatever you're trying to achieve, what can we do and how can we do it? So the planning, it's not a maze particularly, it's not a maze at all. There are only so many different routes that you can take. But so if you go through those processes, is it the right thing to put an outline application and then a pre-app, and then a full application following the pre-app? Now, with outline applications, again, I'm not going to go into all of it. There are certain things that you can apply outline. You can have outline, and it really doesn't cover anything other than the fact that you can build up to maybe a certain number of homes or whatever. It doesn't put any detail on it at all. Well, that generally means it's a lower investment. So people might sort of adopt that approach because they're going to have to put less money in. Again, most of you that follow us in any way, you will be aware that we invest a lot of money in this process and a lot of money up front. So we do spend a lot more money in the planning process than many. So whatever we're trying to build, whether it's that single dwelling in somebody's garden, or whether it's a conversion of a redundant building, or conversion of a property that isn't redundant yet, so a change of use. Now, it depends what it is we're trying to achieve, but the options, the route through, the path that we can take is very much the same. The options don't change too much. They just don't all apply to every objective that there is, or every scheme, everything that you want to do. And as we've said many times, is when we're appraising and when we're strategizing, we don't just say this is the one project that we want to do on here. This is, so I'll give you a bit of a one of ours as a case study, which will I think hopefully make things a little bit clearer. I appreciate when I'm talking about strategy, I'm probably not the most eloquent person. I'm not the person that probably is giving you that absolute route map. And that's because it's not the way I do things, firstly. But it can be complicated. It can be complex. And, I do get tired of people that hide behind the, it's completely unique to your situation. And to a degree, everything is really, isn't it? But, it is unique. It does depend on, what it is you're trying to achieve. Who you are doesn't really make that much difference. It can, if you're a bigger player, you might have more clout, but the bigger players also have more enemies, so more opponents. Shouldn't say enemies, should I? But that's in fact what they are generally. It's so important just to understand what options there are open to you. So the biggest friend that you're going to get through this process is someone with experience of planning, and that is going to generally be a planning consultant. Not just any planning consultants, because some planning consultants are very good at strategy. Depends what it is you're trying to do. And some planning consultants and other consultants aren't very good working as a team player either. So what you want when you're strategizing is somebody that will give you the do's, the don'ts, the red flags. It's sort of, no, we shouldn't really be doing that, but they can also back up why we shouldn't be doing that. But it's very much, the strategy is very much a decision that isn't taken by one party. If it's you and you know all about planning, I know a lot about planning, I still refer to other people. We'll talk to the team, then we'll talk to our planning consultants, depending on where we are, etc. And we'll talk to them, we'll get their feedback. Bear with us, it's signal issues or whatever. We're on a strong 4G signal, but hey, I don't know what it is. Anyway, it's not my fat fingers for once, which is good. So it might be a little bit of overlap in terms of the content. But as I say, the strategy stuff is, yes, I've got the ability to confuse everybody about planning strategy. I don't do it on purpose, I can assure you. It is quite complicated. It is pretty, you've got to be fairly experienced to understand all the options. Oh, we're losing the video now. Right. The crux of it is you've got to have good experience, you've got to have good planning experience, strong planning experience in your core team, whether that's yourselves, whether that's your planning consultants, development consultants, whoever that might be. This is what it's all about, strategizing the planning. Yes, as I've already said, and I'm going to keep repeating it too much, is there are options in the planning process, and you can choose to go different routes, but there are also things which I really want to get onto, what you can do that may influence some of the results. We were talking about different types of project and what you're looking to get out of it, and then formulating the planning from that purpose. So whether it is a simple home extension or sort of domestic extension, or whether it's an 80 unit or an 800 unit site, the principles, the options are largely the same. Yes, there are some finer points certainly when we get on the bigger stuff, and we can enter into planning performance agreements, PPAs. But most of you, that's probably not relevant for most of you. Anybody doing any projects that might be relevant to you, ping us an email and we can have a chat about it. So if we just if I'm just going to lay out the key stages, if you like, of the whole planning process, which we've done videos on all of them, and I'm not going to go into them by detail, but every one of these, it becomes a decision point. So we start off with, are you going to choose to do a pre-app or not? Again, not going to talk about whether you should or shouldn't. You should, but anyway, not going to get into the details on it. And following that, what do we do? This is making an assumption now that we're not using permitted development. That's a separate thing, but we can bring that in. But that's just going to make it more complicated in my explanation. So this is what we're actually doing at the moment. So pre-app, the decision then following that will be, do we make an outline application, a full application, a permission in principle application, if that is valid in your particular area or where the project is likely to be, or do we do nothing? Because that becomes a choice after a pre-app. And then if we are going to go with an outline application, what are we going for an outline application on? Again, not going to talk about the details. You need to watch that video. If it's a full application, how full is it going to be? If it's permission in principle, similar sort of thing here is okay, what detail are we going to look to get? I mean, you don't put too much detail generally in a permission in principle, and we're now seeing a lot more detail put into outline applications, which almost become semi-full applications. So what we're actually, so that's a decision point. It's a milestone, if you like. And then, okay, so during that process, from the time you put an application in, the application process period, what you're going to do? Are you going to be lobbying anybody? Yeah. What homework are you going to be doing? Are you going to be planning alternatives should that not happen? Are you going to actually be planning to crack on with the build? Are you going to be lining builders up, etc.? And more consultants, etc. What you're actually going to be doing? You need to understand the timeline to work out who you need to be talking to, and you're going to have lots of parallel conversations. So you could very well be at the same time talking about perhaps a contractor for a project that's going into planning or it's in planning, in terms of the time frames, you could be talking about them, but also at the same time planning for an appeal, in which case you might be looking at extending funding and things like that. So you have to have multiple threads open at any one time in any project that's planning. You've got to have, this is our preferred option, but actually, what if that doesn't work? Where will we take this? What options are open to us? So as you go through these key things, so the decision point is a key point. What's going to happen from that point forward? We've got an approval, if we've either got for reserve matters, or we've got to get some conditions approved. So what we're going to, or we didn't get it, are we going to go for an appeal, or is it a no? We're stopped now. That's not going to be worth it. It doesn't work for us anymore. It's a no. Let's move forward. So each decision path that you've got, it leads to other decisions. Yeah, unless it's a no. Yeah, and even then, sometimes the no can mean, well, actually, it's no, not now, but we might revisit this in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever it may well be. So as you're going through this process, so you've got your decision. You then make a decision based on that. So if you were going to an appeal, is one of your other decisions that actually you could also, whilst appealing, put another application for a different scheme into the planning authority. So you can actually be running in parallel a different application, a new application, or an appeal on the on the original application. You can bring that forward when you're looking at your applications initially. Are you going to put just one application in? Is it relevant to put 2 in or more? And I will tell you the story, provided we don't get cut off, to actually perhaps to cement some of those points to make you understand, or hopefully help you understand. and then once you go through the appeal, you might have other parallel things running to that, but you get to the appeal, and it's granted, and so you're okay. Actually, again, that there's a legal period of time where maybe you still have to wait. You still can't really crack on. There's 42 days, and again, different video. You need to have watched that one. But also at the same time, you've got the appeal decision, and it might be it's in your favour, but you might have other applications that are following that through. And in which case, are you going to wait? What you're going to do when you're going to actually press the button to either complete the purchase or go on with the work, whatever it might be. So, you need to understand all these options. And probably, if I was drawing it out on a whiteboard or something like that, it started at the top with, 2 or 3, and they'll just keep spreading down and down and down until there's so many decision points. But actually, once you've made a decision, then that cuts some of them out, and it's right, okay, we're following this path. Anyway, I'm conscious that I'm probably just making it more confusing. So what I want to do is, first of all, show you what your options are in respect of what we would call parallel applications, so multiple applications, or what we would call staggered applications, and why we actually would do them. So again, I'll use something that we've actually done ourselves, so it won't necessarily always apply to everybody. But so we had an application on for a change of use on existing building. So it's there. It's not. It's just the fact it's in the middle of a residential area, and whenever you're doing something in the middle of a residential area, for everybody that you get support it, you'll get 50 that hate you and hate it and everything else. So you get a lot of opposition. So we knew that we were going to get a lot of opposition, and we know that because it always happens. And we also do things like public meetings. So this is part of our strategy, and that's really early on. And for us, it's sometimes prior to putting an application in. Sometimes it's prior to a pre-app. Sometimes it's between the pre-app and putting the application. Sometimes it's after the application is in. Now, we do that for 2 main reasons, really. One is to flush out any real issues that we might be looking to to mitigate in some form or other, and who are going to be leading that. And the other thing is purely about marketing, and I say that'll be covered in a completely different video. So we will have that public environment, a public meeting, and sometimes we'll have 2. And that, as I say, that's information gatherer for us, and it also ticks some boxes, when we come to appeal, if we come to appeal. And just to repeat myself, as I said many times, is we always plan to go to appeal. We always strategize that we will go to appeal. Everything is built around that. Our whole tick box paperwork, etc. We put stuff into planners that it is nonsensical in many cases. On one project we had to put a tree report on for 2 or 3 conifers, and it cost, I don't know, £1,000, £1,500 or whatever it was. And it's just ridiculous. This is where people, the system doesn't use its common sense. But as I've said before, don't fight it. If that's what they want, just give them it. It's not worth the energy, to actually, really fight it. Save your energy in your fight for when you've got some control over it and it really means something. We're always looking at. Oh, sorry, turning into a bit of a tech disaster or whatever. Anyway, so we're always looking at those options and those decisions and what we can do. So I was talking about, whether or not you might be lobbying the planning committee, or as we generally prefer to do, is lobby the colleagues of the planning committee. So you may well have a certain scheme that it could be more interest to perhaps one political party, whether it's Labour, the Conservatives, the Liberals, whatever, the Green Party, whatever it might be. And we find all that out by knowing the local politics. And local politics is, yes, boring, isn't it? And it's all that. But Oh, it's so important when you're talking about planning. So those of you that aren't interested in local politics, you need to be. You don't need to be an activist, but you do need to be in order to understand planning. Certainly the more schemes that you do in any particular area, it's very, very beneficial. We do that, and it's all part of our strategy, all part of our process. Strategy remains the same generally in certain key points, is that we profile any keys, particularly the planning committee members and any other key councillors that may be of benefit, or people that we need to watch dangerous in some form or other. And we understand all that. We do that in a variety of different ways. But basically we pay for some information. We get as much information as we can. We pay when we need to pay. We invest, if you like. It's public stuff. It's not really that, nothing devious or anything like that. But it's been understanding who you're dealing with. So pretty much, it's finding out who you can lobby and who you can't. So if you've got a scheme, say very, very much scheme dependent, what the exit's likely to be, etc. You can find some friends in the council, but it's also important to understand who the enemies, if you like. A bit of a strong word, but as I said before, yeah, it can feel like that sometimes, like you're in the trenches. Because I think there's a saying in and around about keeping your enemies closer than your friends, something like that. And I'm sure it's something my dad used to say. And absolutely, your friends can be supportive, but generally it's the enemies that cause you the problems and make the biggest negative impact on what you're doing. So again, we will be talking to key people within the community. So it's not just the councillors; it's community leaders as well, and this is when we're generally looking for some sort of support. A lot of this stuff is done, there's no record of it, there's no paper emails or anything like that. It will be a phone call, and it'll be a meeting for a coffee, a bit more difficult, during a pandemic, etc. And it'll be a word. And this is how, for those of you who don't realise yet, this is how politics works and a lot of commerce works in this country, as probably many other countries. People aren't always going to put things down on paper, but actually they will agree to do certain things. We're not talking about bribery, corruption, or anything like that. We've seen plenty of that, and I suspect it still goes on, but we are in a much more transparent world now, so it's very hard for what we used to call the brown paper envelope, the brown envelope stuff with cash under the table.